welcome. It's so great to have you, Virginia Franco. First of all, apologies if you're expecting to see Claire Davis. She will be with us next week.
Yes.
So she's here in spirit, and hopefully, if she watches the replay, she'll definitely be able to check in. Virginia and I always love to talk about lions and tigers and resumes. We always talk about how we came up with this in Clubhouse, and I think we talked about this because we both
You
kind of like
came up with it.
the Wizard of Oz and this whole thing, and we talk about anything and everything. And I know
That's right.
ever since I started at Lee Act Harrison, I have a much different respect for resume writers. Totally do, because I can't attempt to do anything close to what you do and others in the short amount of time I have. I'm just kind of doing triage about things. Um, what I wanted to really just talk in general about is just whatever people have on their mind. I mean, I did a whole thing yesterday about some of the things I wish people wouldn't do that they do. Maybe I'll start with that. If I see one more resume with an old email address, I'm going to go
Yeah.
crazy. If I see one more resume um, that has all those stupid keywords, or not keywords, but the buzzwords that mean absolutely nothing, I'm going to go crazy.
Okay. Seems
Um,
like you've seen too many at this point. Yeah. Then you start.
I've changed it around. I've kind of done what you've talked about is everyone is pretty much doing what you've done. So tell me how you're different.
Right. That's a really good point. Yeah. And so my background is in journalism, and a lot of the principles
Right.
that I learned way back in the 20th century on how to write for the news still apply to writing today, and they really applied. And you have that similar background, kind of
Right.
apply to resume reading. So think about how you determine if a news story is worth reading. You look at the headline. The
Mm-hmm.
headline grabs you. You read the first couple of lines right after that, which is the lead paragraph, and then you go into the story. And so by having those same components in your resume, you're really helping the similar behaviors to be mimicked. You want the reader to look at and go, this is what the story is going to be about. This is what I want to come back to when I have more time. And the story is going to resonate if your experience shows, we were talking about this offline, your before versus after story
Right.
versus a whole list of responsibilities. That responsibilities show that you are doing what a million other people are doing in that role, but it's the before and after story, which is your accomplishments and your achievements, that's how you stand out. That's how you make your resume more memorable.
And we
But it's
talk about,
hard. It's really
yeah,
hard to
we
do.
talk about that with accomplishment statements. What was the success behind the accomplishment? What did you do for the company? What's the tangible result? It's great
Mhm.
that you did this task, but what was the benefit? How does it show some support for the company in all different ways? And I think most people don't take that next step. It's just bullet
Yeah,
point, bullet point.
it's hard to do, and so you need to step back before you even start writing and say, if I leave this role tomorrow, or when I left this role, what did things look like when they started? What do they look like now? And what was my role in getting things from point A to point B? And that's how you go about putting context and figures and the really important contextual details that turn a responsibility into an accomplishment statement.
I also think, and I've started to kind of rethink some of the idea. There's different, not only different types of resumes, but different versions of resumes to be read. Because if you're going to go to an ATS, there's a certain format that it follows. But maybe if you're sending me a resume or someone else, you want to put in a different light. And I don't know how you
Yeah,
feel about that, or if that's kind
yeah.
of
I saw you wrote that on a post today, and I used to back when I used to create a version for Applying Online, a version for Human Beings. I've gotten away from that only because I feel like it gets even more overwhelming. So what I do is I keep in mind ATS is a applicant tracking software systems or
Mhm.
filing system to help recruiting be less overwhelming. And so if you have your contact information, that's not in a header or footer, if your company name is next to every job title that you wrote, then you're going to get, then applicant tracking systems will be able to read it and file it correctly.
Mhm.
So I think it can be done with one document.
I think my thinking was maybe
How
it
do you
wasn't
think?
clear.
Yeah.
Well, part of it was me. I'm working with a lot of people in the digital or the creative space, and there's no way
Mhm.
that some of that is going to track on an applicant tracking system. But at the same time, if I want to get that resume in front of you or someone else, maybe I want to do that there. Maybe I want to put a link to my portfolio. Maybe I want to do other things. Again, we've all been told the same thing. People don't spend a lot of time reading your resume, which is why you need to do a LinkedIn profile. But maybe just from a visual standpoint. Again, I don't. I'm not a
Oh
resume
yeah,
writer, and that's
yeah,
why I like.
yeah. You're right. So like graphics and the applicant tracking software system strips away all of the design piece,
Right.
but it doesn't mean a link can't. When the human being is a when the human being reads it, and for everything we've heard from recruiters and hiring managers, they actually do see they scan the resumes or skim the resumes they
Uh,
go through. They're going to see the link. So to me, I'd rather just write one.
okay.
So I know a little bit of a. It's good to have these discussions.
No, absolutely, because my
Too bad
mindset.
we don't Claire to weigh in.
Well, my thing is this also. When you have a resume and you have one specific job title, maybe you have a different resume with a different job title because the ATS doesn't read that. Or maybe you have to punch up a couple of things. Now, that's triage of the highest level. And I think most people starting out really need to have, I've called it a basic template resume when I send to them. This is your starting point. Look at it, maybe tweak it a little bit, but this is where you're working from because I don't have a lot of time. Just not that I don't have a lot of time, but I have limited resources and expertise to really know everything about you. So I'm doing my first take on it.
Right. Right. No, and I've heard of people doing master resumes where they sort of have many bullets and accomplishments, and then they pick and choose certain ones based
Right?
on what the target is. Yeah. Yeah. But you and I are coming at it from a different perspective. You're in triage mode, and
Yes, absolutely.
um, I'm in the OR at that point. Yeah.
And my thing with triage, and this is the other part of triage. When you're in a triage in an emergency room situation, people will get the resumes and then they want follow up, follow up, follow up. Did I do this? Did I do that? And your mindset is, I have another patient, not patient, but another person to look at. But at the
Yeah.
same time,
Yeah.
I want to
Sure.
be supportive for you. So that becomes not a frustration because, but it's just like, where do I help in the best way possible? And that's where someone
Sure.
like
Where
you
you
and everyone else comes
maximize
in.
your, yeah. Yeah. No, and it takes a village of people to help you. Job search is not intuitive. That's why
Mhm.
you and I are doing calls like this, or lives like this. It's not second nature. Don't beat yourself up if you don't know where to start. People like us are here to help.
And if you have questions, definitely put them in the chat too, because we would love to get a sense. I was reminded through all this that I need to update my resume, even
Oh, I have
again.
to do mine too, and I would
No,
not write my own resume. I would
no,
get
but I'm
someone else.
saying I would update. I have to update it just to keep it current. Not that I'm looking for a job, but it's like it's one of those things that, and you and I probably the same thing. It's the last thing we think about doing, but it's like we probably should.
Well, and yeah, and same with your LinkedIn profile. But I didn't write my own. I would never. I personally could not. It's my own blood, sweat, and tears. I'm too close to it. So I would. The last time I had my resume written, I had a colleague do it because they're an objective third party.
Yeah. And I know that when I look at resumes, and I'm sure you can relate to this, we don't all have experience in all the specific fields as to what we know at a very high level. So sometimes we need someone to really give us an understanding about their story. I can speak from an IT perspective, but if someone comes in with other things, it boggles my mind and brings me to one of my favorite pet peeves. If I see any more alphabet soup on resumes, I'm going to go crazy. I
You mean all
am
the acronyms?
all the acronyms from
Yeah.
every industry doing everything. I mean, I
So
understand it to some
yeah.
extent, but I would love to get your take on that. When is it too much or not enough for someone to understand what an acronym is or isn't?
Right. So to me, there are certain words that are agnostic to industries like IRS. Everybody knows that means Internal Revenue Service. Everyone
Mhm.
knows that US means United States. Those things you probably don't need to spell out. But then there are terms that are unique to a specific industry. And if you are targeting staying in that industry, I'm okay with peppering the resume with a couple of terms that are really well known in that industry,
Mhm.
because what that does is it sort of shows that you're an industry insider.
Mhm.
But if you're looking to be more industry neutral or make an industry pivot, then you cannot talk using the lingo and the alphabet soup of that industry. You have to translate it. So whether that what that can mean is coming up with a term that can be
Hmm.
used across industries, or maybe it's the first time you use it, you spell it out,
That
and
was my
then
next thing.
you could go with the acronyms going forward.
I'll give you an example of something which I've kind of gotten comfortable with. I know that AWS is Amazon Web Services.
Web services. Mm-hmm.
Maybe I wouldn't have known that a year ago, but now I'm totally okay with things like that because it's part of our vernacular. And I think that may be
And if you were targeting a cloud software engineering role, you don't need to spell out AWS because everyone in that industry is going to know that.
right.
What I do that helps me to figure out what makes sense and not sense to include is I ask my clients to look to find a handful of job postings of interest,
Hmm.
and then you can see how much they're using alphabet soup, how much they're not. When you go down to the job posting, usually towards the end, they have a list of sort of must-have requirements. I look for commonalities across of them. And when you see them, that's a telltale sign that that's the kind of stuff that you need to make sure is in your documents.
So, what is your take on people that have certifications or training, whether it's in my space as Scrum, or maybe you're a certified
Mm,
accountant, or maybe you've got other
sure.
things? Is that a separate section under education? Is that considered a skill? Is there a it depends sort of aspect to that?
I know you're shocked to hear it. To me, it depends. I use the job postings as my roadmap. If those certifications are required, some of them, sometimes I will put them after someone's name, like CPA
Uh-huh.
or for accounting, or if someone's a certified Scrum Master and they're targeting Agile project management, I might include that in there. I will weave it into the branding at the top often, but then I usually do have a certification section where I spell those out. But again, I look at the job posting to see if those are deal breakers and or value adds. But
The
you might have certifications that aren't relevant. I just wrote for someone who'd gotten a CPA, but he's doing something totally different. So I don't need to. I might include that in there just at the bottom to show that he
other
passed all 4 sections. People get that's hard, but I'm not going to scream about it at the top.
the other thing that comes up a lot, and we talk about the 10 to 15 years of experience that should be there, and then maybe you just have a bullet point after. What if someone's worked at a company 20, 25 plus years, and in that time, I mean, what I've tried to do is maybe minimize it as in other experience at the company,
Yeah.
maybe. But you don't want to lose sight of the fact that this person has all that experience, and you don't want to hide it per se, but you want to still portray it.
Well, yeah. So I'm okay at the executive level. If you're targeting a C-suite VP,
Uh-huh.
SVP role, with going it back to 15 years, sometimes even 17 years. But what I'll do is I'll create an earlier section where I pick and choose the stuff that is relevant. Maybe what's relevant is that you can show career progression from like ground up to a higher level role, showing that you understand the ins and outs in the role. Or maybe what's relevant is name dropping. You worked with some of the biggest companies. Or maybe it's something you did, in which case you sort of have like a one liner that gives a high level highlight, but I remove the dates from it. And it's real condensed. And then if it's super relevant, I reference it up at the top. If someone's targeting more of a mid-level role, then often I will use that 10-year cutoff. The
Mhm.
reason behind it, a lot of people talk about age discrimination, and that's certainly something to consider. But what I see more often, even when age discrimination isn't a big factor, is that when we're reading resumes in particular, we as human beings, we often can go into a rabbit hole. And what happens in the rabbit hole is when we see stuff that's, 2006 to 8 prior, we
Mhm.
start saying, oh gosh, I wonder if he went to school with my friend. I wonder if his kid, just all that side nonsense enters our brain. And when you just have 10 seconds to make an impression, I don't want 3 seconds spent in the rabbit hole. And adopting that approach where you have an earlier experience section with stuff that's
Mhm.
synopsized and condensed, you help the rabbit hole to be bypassed.
I want to acknowledge some
I don't
people.
do that with LinkedIn though. At
Okay.
LinkedIn, I tackle it a little different. What are your thoughts on it for LinkedIn?
Well, I have a couple of different thoughts. First, I want to just do a shout out. Terry Seaman, the second
Hey,
time I've seen
Terry.
you on a call in a couple of hours or so. David Shuckman from our PSG Mercer Carney group, and I'm looking forward to
Wow.
being there again. Linda Brubaker, 2 calls as well. Um, and Janice Salomons and I, we both work at Lee Hecht Harrison. So we're, you know,
Okay.
And we actually had a conversation before. And I think one of the reasons that I think it's so important for us to learn from each other is that we all know what we know, which is as much as possible, but it's always about learning what's going on out there. Now, from a
Yeah.
LinkedIn perspective, it's changed again. My whole open to work mindset has changed again. I mean, now my
Yeah.
mindset is put open to work out there anywhere, everywhere you want, but it's not enough. You got to have something in the about section. You have to have something in the title to kind of get you involved, because a lot of people that are on LinkedIn as recruiters don't see open to work because they don't have the recruiter seat. So it's like you're missing an opportunity. I mean, and I've gone back and forth. I mean, if we have this conversation a month from now, I may change again.
Mhm.
But I'm just thinking from a job seeker perspective, put it out there. But they don't even have their LinkedIn profile sometimes on their resume, which is another thing that makes me wonder.
Right. So with the open to work thing, the problem is that there's no one size fits all answer. You might
Exactly.
have some people that look at open to work and go, that makes a person look desperate. And then you have other people that know that there's recruiters out there that might prioritize people that have open to work. So what I tell people is do A/B testing. Try it for a certain time frame and then try it without and see the differences. But regardless of what banner is on your picture, you need to have a complete profile, which means headline, name, skills, experience, education, right? Those are the main sections. And then whatever else you can fill out.
And I had a recruiter, actually, from a recruiter standpoint. Um, I actually had a recruiter reach out to me and say, and this was a post he did, and he said, if you don't put open to work in your about section, if you don't put open to work somewhere else, I'm doing searches on open to work. I can't assume that you're open to work just because you're saying it. So the banner is a
And
part of
you don't know who you're going to be dealing with.
exactly.
So right. So that's why I like A/B testing. The one new thing that I learned about it maybe a month ago. Shout out to Tom Pounder.
Right.
It's a back end setting for those who have the LinkedIn talent. What is it? Talent Solutions or Recruiter, the product, the paid product that you can use to recruit people. You can now share your resume with recruiters on the back end, and you can put 3 or 4 resumes in there. And what that does is it actually adds keywords, it adds skills to your profile. So the person
Yeah.
with the LinkedIn recruiter actually will see more than the 50 that you and I see. So it's a great way to enhance your keywords searchability. If you want to be more under the radar with your search, not everyone wants to scream that they are looking. So you can tell recruiters you're looking and you can share your resume so that your more keywords can get picked up that way.
I had a great A/B test which I wanted to share. I was actually in Georgia, and
Mhm.
I actually had met someone at an event who has this recruiter package thing. And he showed me on the back end that when someone turns open to work on, he gets notified right away of the newest people that have gotten open to work on. So we can follow them in real time. So he knows. So if you turn it on and off and put it up, he'll see it. So it's almost like when we used to put our resume in a job board every couple of weeks or so to be at the top of the list. Same sort of
That's
thing.
lovely. That's lovely. But we look at the end of the day, hiring managers and recruiters are not looking for the best job seeker. They're looking for the best candidate.
Uh-huh.
So you've got to put your best foot forward because even if you're looking to work, if your profile doesn't reflect that you're a great candidate, you're not going to get a call.
So I'm looking, Karen has a couple of questions, advice on how to write and what information should be included in the resume summary.
So,
And then the whole work gap thing is an extremely important discussion to
mhm.
have just in general. So you can, if you want to take both questions, that would be great. I'll leave this on the screen if you can see them.
Sure. So what I do to write the paragraph, let me tell you what I don't do anymore.
Okay.
I do not use an objective statement that worked great until like 2002, where you said this is what I'm looking for. I also do not pack the summary section with a lot of adjectives to describe my clients because what's happened is that even though a lot of adjectives are true, so many people have used them. They don't pack a punch anymore. They're diluted. So what I do to craft that paragraph is I go to the job postings and I literally highlight the things that several postings have in common, and I weave those into the paragraph together with a handful of details about my client. That way, if the reader looks at nothing else except for the headline and that paragraph, just like they do when they're skimming the news, they know what you're targeting, why it makes sense that you're a good fit, and they walk away with one or two details about you that are going to make you memorable. The second question was about medical leave or gaps in medical
Medical
leave,
leave
right?
indoor job gap, because a lot of people have them.
Yeah.
So it's about explaining it. I don't want to say away, but how do you portray that? Because you want to acknowledge it, I think, but what's the best way to go about that?
So if your gap happened 4 years ago, and by just removing months from your years of employment, you can camouflage it. So let's say you had a gap from July of 2021 and then you started your new job in March of 2022. Remove the months, it's seamless. You don't, to me, it's not worthy of addressing because you've since gone on. But let's say it's current. To me, you call it out. You can say, this is not related to health, but I just worked with someone who took an intentional sabbatical after COVID and the social justice movement that happened that following summer. She was burnt out. Her role was really heavily involved in that. So we talked about how she applied her skills to doing a 100-year-old house renovation, and she also traveled the world. So we just sort of spelled it out, 2 little lines, and moved on. And that way the reader saw it, but what they really focused on was what they had done prior to that, which was the big impactful role. With a health concern, what the important thing is for the reader to realize that it is in the past and you are in a position to move on. So you can just say health sabbatical or health leave, and just sort of a sentence indicating if there's anything that you did to keep your skills current, reference that in there. But what I write really will depend on what the health condition was and what the role is targeting. So it depends, but bottom line, call it out, keep it brief and simple. The cover letter is a great place where you can sort of say, look, I'm ready to go. This is no longer an issue.
It depends are probably two words I use all the time.
I know.
Because it's the old 1, 2, 3 page resume. Do this, do that. Every situation is different. I think calling it out is the most important thing.
Yeah.
I like to tell people, if you've done training, if you've attended events, if you've gone back to school, whatever it is, certification, that is all
If you
relevant.
did work for people for free, if you lent your talents to help someone and didn't earn a dime, it doesn't matter. Just highlight whatever you can do to show that you are ready and equipped to hit the ground running with minimal onboarding.
So one red flag, which I don't want to say I've called out, but I bring it up to my clients. If you've just lost your job and you have on your LinkedIn profile an end date, but your resume has a current job, because maybe you even haven't updated it yet, you're not sure. Does that send up a red flag, or is it just me kind of being a little bit anal about the difference?
What I've seen is more the opposite, where the resume reflects and then the LinkedIn doesn't.
Okay.
So I'll tell you what I do. If somebody is still on the book, so let's say they lost their job, but the terms of their agreement allowed them to get biweekly pay for another year, then I'm okay sort of listing that you're still employed because technically you still are. But if your job ended, I make sure to list that on the resume. I'll put the end date. But what I will do on the resume on LinkedIn is 2 things. One, I recognize LinkedIn sort of the Wild West, and not everyone. Look, we've seen stuff that profiles that are 2 years out of date, and I don't recommend that. But if your LinkedIn doesn't reflect the fact that you are gone, I think you have a little bit of a grace period, a couple months before you put a date. But what I will do to help make sure that the job seeker doesn't get dinged, because we've seen where people I'm rambling. People, when in searches, often show up. People that are currently employed show up higher in search than people that have an end date. So what I have done is I will list the job as, I'll put the date as present, but then in the job title, I'll put ended, 7/23 or something like that, just show the human being that you're gone, but that way the system still recognizes you as current, so you show up better in search.
Yeah, I think
That was confusing.
well, we all go through, and what I've actually also suggested too, and because it goes with you've lost a job, not your experiences. Maybe you create a new job for the title that you have, but you list in the experience in the paragraph there that you're currently looking for a job and these are your skills. And it's kind of like a wink wink on the algorithm. But the problem with that is, you know, I just think you have to be authentic with whatever you do.
You have to be authentic. And I've used that approach once if the job search has drawn out. So if we're talking 6 months ago, 3 to 6 months ago, to me, it's okay to sort of do the wink wink so that the system thinks you're employed and show when it ended. If we're talking a year and a half plus now, then it's time to sort of create something that shows this is what I'm doing to keep my skills sharp.
I think there's so many people that are unfortunately out of work now that it's not as much a stigma as before. Um,
That might be the one upside of what happened
yeah.
the craziness of the last 2 or 3 years. Absolutely.
I mean, I'm a big believer in just being transparent and owning what you're going through, because I think the mindset a lot of job seekers have is it's their fault that they lost the job, and it's not their fault.
It
Or
is not. Look, we have seen so many layoffs that have nothing at all to do with performance. It's everything to do with trimming costs for lots of different reasons. I just lost my train of thought. I had a really good point. Oh, the cover letter. If there is any big potential elephant in the room, why is this person making a switch? Why have they been unemployed? Why are they moving from Timbuktu to wherever? Then the cover letter to me is a really good place to spell that out.
I think it's so important to be honest about things. And we've
Yeah.
jobs and recruiters and hiring managers have all lost jobs. No one has not lost a
No
job.
one escapes. It's when, not if. At this point, you're going to lose your job.
And I think,
And the problem is if you don't call it out and you're not authentic and transparent, people they're going to make up their own narrative. So why not control the narrative?
do you find that people of a certain age try to downplay their experience because they're afraid they're going to be perceived as being discriminated against or vice versa? Or is that just something that some of us see based on the work that we're doing?
I think people do a lot of things because they're worried about discrimination. But I think what they're doing are the wrong things. Um, to me, the two big, and I'm an older Gen Xer, and you're what, a young baby boomer? Is that right?
I'm going to admit now on this call, which
Mhm.
maybe people don't know, I just started Medicare a few months ago.
All right, so I'm 55, you're 65.
Yep,
We're
yep,
old,
yep, yep, yep.
no matter how you slice it. So to me, the two biggest things, biases that people of our generations face are they think that we are low tech, that we don't play well with others, and that we think we're the smartest in the room. Um, and then there are concerns that, oh, you're so senior, you're going to cost a fortune, that sort of thing. You write the resume for the role that you're targeting. So if you're targeting an executive resume, an executive level role, no one expects you to be 30 years old. So
Mhm.
but the other biases, what you do to address them and overcome them is you write your resume in a current format. You include your LinkedIn profile that shows that you sort of understand the latest professional technology. You include the technology software that the job calls for in the postings.
Mhm.
The way you sort of show that you play well with others is that you use words like collaborated with, partnered with, um, part of a team that. You use words like agility and adapted to sort of show that you can go with you can move as a company needs you to move. Those are the things you do to combat the biases, not dumb your resume down.
And the fact of the matter is that the bias is on the other side. It's on the other side, and there's nothing you can really do about it. I think companies that think that way are very short-sighted. Um, where the other issue that comes up again and again is applying for a job where they're looking for someone that doesn't exist. And then what do you do about that? I mean, we all talk about whether it's the pink unicorn or the green this or whatever. And the answer is you're not going to have all the skills. And they don't even know what they want, but you just have to put yourself in the best light.
And so that's when I really appreciate those job postings where when you go down to the bottom, they sort of have must-haves.
Yes.
And then sometimes they'll then say also nice to haves. So you better have those must-haves. The nice haves you can flex on a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think there's nothing wrong with asking for advice, not even just from people like myself, but from others that are going through job search. We talk about all accountability groups. We actually had that discussion before, because you don't know what other people may see on a resume. Sometimes you need another set of eyes to take the blinders off, because you're so close to your job search and your resume that you don't see something that might be obvious.
That's right. That's right. And there's a lot of places where job search can get bottlenecked. And so sometimes you need an outside perspective to help you figure that out. Like if you're getting interviews, then your resume is not the problem.
Right.
If you are getting first round interviews, but you're never getting to the end, then it's probably your interviewing skills. If you're getting to the end and then you don't get the job, might be your negotiation tactics. So figuring out where the process is breaking down, I think, is really helpful to helping you figure out where you need some assistance and
And
support.
sometimes it's a little thing like what you think the job is not what the job actually is, because you're so in tune with what the job title was that you have. But maybe they've tweaked it, or a different company has a different idea about it, but you still can do the job. So sometimes it's like getting out of that zone. I'm now able to do this even though I didn't have that title, in kind of
Well, that's
positioning.
what I think I'm where I love the idea of informational interviewing,
Mhm.
because you can get real intel on what a company's like, what the roles entail in case it's maybe different from what you thought. And then sometimes a lot of times you're able to use those conversations to get connected with other people and find out about opportunities before they're being posted or as they're being posted. And then what that gives you is an internal champion on the inside that um, is looking for your resume. And to me, that's sort of like a Disney World Fast Pass or whatever they call it now. That's not called Fast Pass anymore, but you know
Now,
what
I'd
I'm
be remiss
saying.
by asking what your feeling is about AI and all this, because we all in this industry talk about AI and it's all over the place. I like to use it as an informational tool. I certainly use it a lot for that purpose, but you see resumes, you deal with AI. Is that
Yeah.
something that,
So what I love AI for is when I have writer's block to help me um, get a good fresh start. But
Mhm.
I wind up editing 60-70% of it. What I will not do is put in my resume and say write a resume for this, because what that does is then it takes my proprietary information and makes it available for the universe to see, and then my accomplishments might show up on someone else's documents, and you don't want that. um, but it's a great draft, definitely requires editing.
it's also great from an interviewing perspective. If you want to ask AI the question about an interview, how would you answer this question? It's a starting point. It's,
It's great for research and to say what kinds of questions should I be asking for this role? What kind of questions might someone be asking me? Um, Give me information about this role or this company. So to me, it definitely saves you on Google searches and way faster than the way we used to have to research back when pre-Google. So
yeah. And I also love to consider LinkedIn as a database. It's not just a job board. Whether you're looking for
the
a
world's
contact
best
at a
CRM, hands down. Yeah.
company, information, posts, whatever it is. And I think people miss that opportunity. Um, One of the hidden things I love is if you do a search for events under certain keyword, you can find all different events to attend, and you can find people at those events. I mean, you can go down a whole rabbit hole with LinkedIn searching, but if you do it right, it can be
You
great.
can search for second degree connections that work at X company.
Yep.
If you are looking to make a career pivot, you can look at people in these roles, and you can see if they worked in another industry because those keywords are in there. I mean, it's a tremendous database.
Which is why you have to have a complete profile, put everything on there, and don't assume people know anything. And this is also different between a senior and a non-senior. I see a lot of senior LinkedIn profiles that are so basic because they probably just put it together, never really thought about it, and it's there. And now, unfortunately, they're on the job market, and it's like
Mhm.
I have to pretty much start from scratch, and it's hard. I'm not saying, but it can be done. So I think it becomes a living document, and you have to keep always on top of it.
It is. And look, if you're the CEO of Coca-Cola, you probably don't need a stellar LinkedIn profile, but
Right.
everybody else that does, or at least it helps you. it is it's what I love about it. It is a free place to market yourself professionally, and you don't have to fill out every little teeny weeny section, patents and
No,
publications and all of that. But if you focus on the main ones, that that is a great start. And the algorithm likes that, right? It likes you to have a complete
and if you do
profile.
a search on Google with your name, your LinkedIn profile is going to be one of the first things that shows up
Mhm.
anyway.
Yeah, so it lends credibility. And if you don't have it, or if your LinkedIn reflects something that's not what you're showing on your resume, then you leave people scratching their heads, and it goes back to you not controlling the narrative.
That's such a big part of it. I
Yeah,
think,
absolutely.
and I think the most important thing, if people listen to the call, all the advice and suggestions we're giving are just general and helpful, but every situation is different.
Yeah.
Um, there's a whole discussion functional versus versus chronological and hybrid resumes, and that's a whole other rabbit hole that we can all go down. But
Another rabbit hole. I see that Lizette Melendez said highlight volunteer work
work,
too.
yeah,
Fill out as many sections as you can.
yeah,
But if there are sections that are not applicable to you, don't fill them out for the sake of filling them out.
and this is a valid point with the open to work. Yes, importantly, your contacts and others will see it too and may be more willing to network and provide you with visibility,
Mm,
connections, and
yeah,
resources. I've
yeah.
actually done some searches, and you might guys want to try that. If you do a search on open to work and then you look at posts, you will find lots of people that are open to work, lots of people that are candidates. Recruiters do searches that way too. And I'm not even talking about the hashtag. It's just that we're doing searching on keywords.
So most of my clients are actually not looking. They're not. They are currently employed, so they're
Right?
facing a different predicament, which is how do I job search without letting my employer know that I'm looking. And so in those cases, you're not going to put open to work. You're going to leverage some of the backdoor channels, like turning it on for recruiters, like sharing your resume behind the scenes. And then what you're doing is you are describing your present role in a way that shows that you are a really good corporate ambassador while also showing the reader that you know your stuff.
Absolutely. It's about perception. And even sometimes just
That's right.
engaging in other people's posts as starting a conversation, sharing your knowledge, and maybe that's all it's needed. Because if you're passively looking a lot, like a lot of people I work with
Mhm.
are, you want to be careful, but at the same time, you want to show that you're available. And the open to work for recruiters is a good option for that, just to have that way.
That's right. And to your point with engaging in conversation, not everyone is comfortable or confident creating posts on their own.
Mhm.
And so doing a search using LinkedIn's filters to figure out who is active and posting and that's in your space, and adding insightful comments, 5-10 minutes every morning.
Right.
That that traction will get your name showing up in more people's feeds, and it also is one of the factors in the algorithm.
Yeah.
I've said this before, LinkedIn is like a needy boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse,
Yeah.
partner. They want you paying attention to it, which means connecting, having a full profile, uh, commenting, all of that.
If there's a company you're interested in, see if someone at the company is doing a post, join their post as an
Mhm.
individual, be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and follow the company,
Yep.
follow a couple people, and when you have a target company or have a list of target companies, to me, that's a not half the battle, but it goes a long way. And in this, because then you can connect with a handful of people that are in that company. You can follow the company, and that will also impact how you show up in search. And the people that are searching for talent from that company know, oh, this person already knows a couple people in that company. It helps to cement the messaging
I
that
think
you're a really good candidate for that role.
the other reason I believe a lot in doing a lot of connecting is not everyone has these in mails or wants to spend all the money that way. But once you're
Mhm.
connected to someone, then you can directly message that person and there's no charge to do that, as opposed to having to rely on an in mail, which either you
Emails,
have to pay
yeah.
for. Again, it's depending on who you're working with. Some people don't use them a lot, but again, you want to leverage every possibility you have.
And so what I do, and Claire actually referenced this in a post of hers this morning, if you need to connect with someone or you want to have a conversation with someone, see if they are active on LinkedIn. You can go to their profile and you'll see activity from the past 90 days. If
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing, it means that your email probably, there's a chance it's not going to get seen. So in that case, you're going to bypass LinkedIn and try to connect with them via email. If you don't know their email, Mail Scoop is one of my favorite tools to help you figure out someone's email. And then you can use Mail Tester. Shout out to Jessica Hernandez. She's the one who talked about that, to make sure that the email is the right one. So if you're really determined to reach someone, figure out the best place to make that happen.
The other thing to think about when if you've lost a job, make sure you have another email address associated with your LinkedIn account. I've had 3 people I know
Yeah, don't
who,
use your work email. Don't use your work email. Don't
yeah,
use your
I've
work
had
email.
three
Yeah.
people I know over the years that have lost their access to their email, to their LinkedIn account because they had it at a work email. Now you can get onto
Yeah.
LinkedIn, but that's not the same thing as accessing your LinkedIn profile.
Right, right. The other thing that I think is important, and this is such low-hanging fruit when it comes to your LinkedIn profile, is make sure the email you want for job search appears in the contact section. And then I go the extra step and I list it in the about section.
Absolutely.
That way, if you make sure that your LinkedIn profile is public and make sure to go to your settings and make sure it is, then someone, even if they're not connected with you, they don't have to go that extra click to get your email. It's easy to find.
You want to make it as easy as possible to be found. So many recruiters
Yep.
and like have told me, I saw this person, they didn't have the skills, so I just moved on, even though they had the skills because it wasn't there. So they're just doing Boolean search after Boolean search sometimes. And
Yeah.
if it's not there,
No, that's right. That's right. And some people do. I've had people object and say, I don't want a bunch of people to be able to spam my email. And so what I say to that is go to Gmail, create a professional one just for purposes of your work,
mhm,
put it on there and forward it to your other email. That
yeah,
way you're at least seeing those, or make sure to check it.
that's actually what I've started to do too. Is I've had a forwarding because that way I can pick and choose. But
That's
these are
right.
all great strategies, and I think it's so important for people on the call, whether you're watching now or listening later, to engage and not be afraid to try different things. You know, with the job you lost may not be available, which is not to say that there aren't jobs out there. And it's the old hidden job market, which we will talk about. It's not hidden that no one knows about it. It's just finding where those jobs exist, and that takes some work.
And so, yeah. And so to me, the first step before you get started writing your resume, before you get started on your LinkedIn, is be clear on the role that you want next. And maybe you don't, if you know that and you're ready to go, great. If not, informational interviews, chat GPT, all of that will help you to figure that out. There's coaches that help you to specialize in getting career clarity based on your strengths, what you're good at that you like to do, what you're good at that you like to do that'll pay you money. So once you have that target, then you can say what kinds of companies do I want to do this at? And then you have your target, you have your list of target companies, and then you can go start the process of writing your resume, writing your LinkedIn, speaking to those targets. And you are then connecting with people that work at those companies, figuring out who you know, who you need to know, and getting those conversations going while looking at job boards for company, see what kind of roles those companies are posting about.
And I think what I love, and resumes are one side, and LinkedIn, people don't do, and this is, I guess, true for both. It's a marketing aspect. Your resume should be marketing you too, not just being chronological or whatever the jobs are. And I think people I know struggle with that. You know, it's I've done this,
Yeah.
which is great, but then how do I put myself out there, whether it's through a marketing brief or something else? I mean, is there any like best advice to kind of get behind the mindset of I've just done this and I don't really know how to make myself look better?
So you're right. I think you're saying job search is like a sales and marketing campaign.
Yeah, it is.
You're the product, except for you're the product, right? And so when I'm writing the resume and LinkedIn, I'm picking and choosing the things that are relevant. Um, I liken it to it's your brochure, not your blueprint. If you are um, looking to buy a house initially, you're not looking at what the pipes look like, and what the circuit box looks like. You're looking at the big picture stuff. Same thing goes with your resume. But then in terms of additional collateral to help present you in a great light, like a portfolio, like a website, if you have, I don't think it hurts to put together some sort of a digital book or in-person book to showcase what you've done. That doesn't, not all industries lend themselves to that. Like an accountant, you might not have that. A creative person, someone in marketing might. But what I love about LinkedIn is that it allows you to, in the absence of having a full-on portfolio like that, you can include items like projects you worked on, presentations you gave. If there's links to articles that you were referenced. Not everyone has that, but if you do, you can pick and choose those, and they'll show up in the featured section towards the top of your resume. And again, you pick and choose the stuff that helps to advance the brand that you're trying to convey.
And I think part of the brand, and this is another thing that I started thinking about too. We all talk about, it used to be references, now it's recommendations. If you worked at a company, go back and recommend people that you used to work with as a way to reconnect, to stay in touch, and maybe have them recommend you back, maybe not right away, but it's another way to reach out. You may have been a manager, but you work with people and you want to acknowledge them. So it's another way to kind of start the conversation again.
That's a really good point. And if you're looking, if you are targeting a role where leadership is required, it's also helpful to have recommendations from people that were your direct reports, as well as people that were maybe your customers or above you. The more recommendations, the better, but you at least want 3 to 5, and preferably ones that are current.
And at least one a year. And it's easy to start with people that you know now, but you'd be surprised. People you worked with 10 years ago, you have no idea where they are now. They could be in a much different place. And that's what's great about LinkedIn being a whole digital Rolodex, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you can keep up with them. Absolutely. And I know a lot of people are hesitant to reach out to people when it's been a long time since they've spoken. I hear that all the time. And I have yet to come across someone who isn't genuinely happy at the prospect of connecting with someone if it's been a long time. They don't love it when you reach out and ask for a job, but if they're someone that you had a relationship with and it's catching up, I think people like that. And if they can help, so much the better.
That's the important thing. When you reach out to one, you're not asking for a job. That's not the first thing that should come out of your connection request or anything else, because people can sense that from a mile away.
Right. And that's right. I mean, people do want to help though. So if you can say, I've lost my job, this is what I'm targeting. I'd love if I could, catch up with you to learn how you landed in this company, or if you know of other people that I should speak with, or if you might know 1 or 2 people who work in this company.
That's great though. Like asking
people
someone
are willing to do that.
Ask someone what they love working at the company. What is it about the company? Why do they enjoy working at the company? Put it back on them. You're doing some research.
And if you know them well, what they don't like, that way you need some real intel.
No, absolutely. So I want to thank you
those
very much.
Those conversations are so powerful. I was having them in my 20s, way before LinkedIn. I didn't know they were called informational interviews, but that's how I landed the majority of my roles, just through curiosity and in conversation.
I know a lot of when I was out of work a long time ago, I used to reach out to people at my kids' sporting events, and the parents were there, and I'd be looking up the parents. Now, this was probably pre-LinkedIn, but once they got on LinkedIn, I kind of knew who they were, and they weren't just like the senior manager person. They were the mother or the father of the kid on my son's soccer team or a sporting event, and we could chat about things in a different way. So you just never know where relationships are going to come from.
That's right. You've got your first string people, which are your immediate friends and family, but then you definitely have that second tier, which are the people that you run into in your different walks of life.
That's where volunteering is so great too. I was talking about this on the other call before. You learn a lot about volunteering, and it isn't even just the technical stuff, which you might know. You learn about people management. You learn about negotiation. You learn your skills.
That's a good point. But volunteerism, participating in the associations related to your profession, people in your alma mater, even if they didn't graduate while you don't have to have been in school in the same time as them. Any common connections like that are great places to start having
Yeah,
conversations.
like if you join your alumni associate, see if you can be on a committee which has events or things, and see if you get involved in events and start planning events and whatever's involved. And there's all different things out there, and you can still be very active in what you do, for sure.
No, people reach out to me all the time. I went to University of Richmond, teeny tiny, 2,500 people in my whole school, but people reach out to me from there to this day that are much younger than me or older than me, and I'm happy to talk with them just because we went to the same school.
Me too, with my school, which used to be 8,000, now it's 20,000. They reach out to me all the time,
It's
not just for
huge.
money, not just for money, because they
Yeah.
know, but it's about building And then my kids, my son who just graduated Northeastern, they stay in touch with me there too, which is great also because they have a Facebook group and we all share certain things on the Facebook group. It's a parents group and we share our job search suggestions for our kids because we're not allowed to mention our kids'
Love
name,
that.
but hypothetically, we can talk about things in a way that we can all help each other out.
I love that. My daughter-in-law just made a pivot, and she used she went to UNC Chapel Hill. She used her Tar Heel network, and then she also talked to professors because she's not that far out of school, and asked and connected with them and got names from them. So she
Absolutely.
left no stone unturned.
And the younger generation has a much different way of connecting and networking than us. And we can learn from each other. And I think that's the missed opportunity a lot of people have. We learn
Yeah,
from each other. It's not a good or bad thing.
that's right. It's just different.
So
Absolutely.
I'm looking here. It says
Yeah.
curiosity and conversation are key. I was wondering if people were still listening to us because there's nothing going on in the chat for 15
Yeah.
minutes. The part of it,
Curiosity, not nosy. That's what I tell my kids.
I mean, part of me is like, but you and I could chat all day. I think it's such a
Yeah.
and but the story about this, we both did not know each other except for maybe we connected on LinkedIn a while ago. I mean, let's just think about
I
it.
just trying to. I know we met during the pandemic, but I don't really remember how.
And that's the thing. We just met, whether we connected or I saw one of your posts or vice versa, and we just stayed in
Yeah.
touch. We just started talking, and you knew Claire, I guess, before me,
Oh,
and
yeah, but just by a few months. And we've never met in person.
never.
We've
But we,
tried,
but
but we talk a lot now.
this is how building relationships is all
Yeah,
about, and anyone can do it. It's not, it takes a little bit of time and energy, but it's well worth the effort.
that's right. That's right. And don't let age differences and industry differences and not being in the same city or state, don't let that stop you. Because there is people have common threads
Absolutely.
that mitigate those other things.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Virginia. I don't know if you have a call at 3:30
Thank
or not, but
you.
if you do, I
Yes,
want
I
to give you
do.
I want to give you time because
Okay.
I definitely want to
All
make
right.
sure that we do that. So have a great day, everyone. We will be back next week at, I think we said 4:30, if I'm not
It's
mistaken.
later in the afternoon,
And
Eastern. Yeah, for
it's an
Claire, who's on
audio
the
event.
West.
You won't see my pretty face, which is probably a good thing, but you'll be able to hear from us. So I look forward to seeing you
Yes.
then. All right, take care, everyone.
Take care. Have a great rest of your week.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Cool.